And we are back from the Bahamas. Oh my goodness. Oh, it was so much fun. Just like unforgettable memories and beautiful weather, beautiful people. I forgot what it's like to be in such a tropical setting. I have not, last time I was in Mexico was in high school back in 2008 and 2009. I went for my brother's senior trip and then my senior trip, and it had been so long since I've been in like that type of climate, and it's so nice. The one downfall I will say is because I am not like sun baby, if that's a thing, like I used to be. Like I used to lay out all the time in high school and then kind of into college. But as you get older, at least for me, and become an adult, I was working more, so I didn't have as much time to just be, laying out all the time in the sun. So my skin is not as used to it as it used to be. I could tell I started to adapt a little bit as I was down there, being able to tolerate more time in the sun and not feel like as tired. But it's a whole different, lifestyle compared to living where I do, which is in Michigan, and where we get, not as intensive sun and not as long of summers and heat and all of that. So my one complaint was that by the end, the second to last day, I'd spent probably the most time in the sun than I had all the other days prior to. And I woke up on the day we were leaving with like heat rash, I think. You can't really see it in the video, I don't think. But just like little bumps on my arms, kind of on my hands, and just started to feel like, okay, I'm kind of at my limit for the sun. I'm ready to go back to Michigan. I'm ready to get back into my routine with my diet, with my training, with my sleep, with just a little bit more balance in my life. I don't know about you, but I am not the type that is always on the go. And I feel like on vacation, when I was with my family, they wanted to do a lot of things, which was, I'm not going to not allow myself to have those experiences, but it is nice to kind of be back in my own element and not feel like, we only have a certain amount of time and we need to go do all of these things. So if there is a complaint, that probably is it. It's been very nice to be home for a couple days now and just have some time to reflect and kind of deeper absorb all of those memories and experiences that will be with me for a lifetime. Okay, so update for the time away while I was in the Bahamas. Like I mentioned in last video, planned to take a diet break, and I knew I wasn't going to weigh my food, I wasn't going to weigh myself. I was taking a deload week from training. I think the second day we were down there, Jay and I actually got a partner workout in on the beach, which was incredible. I did one yoga session on the beach while I was down there, which was incredible. But besides that, we were very active the whole time. So while I wasn't training, I definitely was getting my steps in. My lunch, it's preheating. I was getting steps in. We were just, swimming and scuba diving not scuba diving, snorkeling, I'm sorry. So just, when you live in that type of climate or you travel to that type of climate, you're outside, you're doing things. Totally allowed myself to enjoy food while I was there. Again, did not engorge myself, but there was a Starbucks very near to where we stayed, and we definitely walked there multiple times, got my caramel macchiatos, so tasty. There was a Dairy Queen, and so we went there multiple times too, enjoyed some ice cream treats. There was a pastry shop falling out of my chair nearby with just incredible danishes and cakes and cheesecakes and cookies and muffins. So we went there for a couple days and got to try. I had a guava Danish, and guava is very popular in the Bahamas. It was really good, not as like tart and sweet as I would have anticipated, but had a nice glaze on top and was just really tasty. Also had a cinnamon roll Danish. So good. We got fresh lobster tail one night. We went out to eat to this really cool sushi restaurant, and they had the most amazing chicken fried rice, and just like everything about this place was so good. The atmosphere, the people, the creative mind that came up with this place. It was called the Social House. In case you're ever down in Bahamas, highly recommend going here. We stayed specifically in Nassau and Paradise Island, around that area, so that's where the Social House is. And yeah, it was just like so perfect. I love the color purple. They had like beautiful purple ambiance lighting. We sat outside and there was just gorgeous bamboo right along the edge of the seating area outside. So like the lighting and the shadows through the bamboo was so cool, and like the breeze as the bamboo blows in the wind was, it was so cool to watch. I can't. Zero regrets. It was 1,000% worth it. Oh, and then one last thing. We stopped in Baltimore on our layover on the way down there and on the way back. And if you ever travel through Baltimore, or if you were ever on the East Coast, we discovered a place called Silver Diner. Comment below if you've heard of it, but it was amazing. It was like the perfect Jay and Courtney type of restaurant to discover. Just such quality, like local sourced organic food. Very tasty, but like comfort type of food, but from quality sources. So on the way down there, I got this like power breakfast. It was high protein with egg whites, feta, all the veggies, really hearty sourdough bread, like huge slices. And I think there was one other thing that came with it. I can't remember now. I think there was avocado on top of it, but it was amazing. Jay had this like bison huevos ranchos dish. I forget exactly, but such good food. And then on the way back, we stopped there again because we had the same place for a layover. Jay got incredible French toast. It was seriously mind-blowing. It tasted like fluffy, light yellow cake, and then the syrup that went with it was so sweet, and like it was like mind-blowing. And then on the way back, I got just a Denver omelet, I think, which is a pretty standard type of meal you would get at any kind of breakfast diner, but it was just so good. So yeah, that was, as far as activity, as far as food, kind of, what we experienced. And then we were very busy most of the time. Now that we are back, today is Monday. It's technically not a weigh-in week for me. Next Tuesday will start my next week of weigh-ins, but I did want to just get a glimpse at where I was at after eating at maintenance, probably a slight surplus some days, the whole time we were down there, just to see where we are. So I weighed in today, and I'm at 148.5. So I was actually really surprised. I am down about a pound from when I left. So that was kind of cool to see, because obviously that was kind of my goal, was to just completely de-stress, fill my cup, and step away from everything. And that obviously was to my benefit, coming back and just feeling lighter, and it's showing on the scale. So that is amazing. Last episode, I showed you guys some of my refeed and meals, And I'm thinking this episode, let's dive a little bit deeper into my training. I'm actually going to be tweaking more things in my training moving forward to just make them better fit me, the different exercises, as well as better hit and work on my weaknesses. So I'll show you guys how I'm doing that this week. I don't think I've really touched too much on my training, so I think that'll be fun to dive into this week, as it's kind of been bubbling up to the surface, kind of in the back of my mind, like I should maybe make some adjustments to have my training bring out the best in me. So yeah, let's dive into some training. After spending about a week in the Bahamas, like I said, I was pretty active, but this training day was a couple days after traveling. So just a lot of time sitting in the car, a lot of time sitting in airports, sitting on planes, and my glutes needed to be worked. I felt like I needed to get blood flow to the area. So I chose this as kind of like a warm-up movement, and I think I also added it in during my session. And it is just a band at the heels and a back extension. So I'm thinking of pressing my pelvis into the floor as I lift from the heel. And that lift is coming from my lower back muscles, my glutes are working, feel my hamstrings working, as well as my inner thigh / adductors. I feel those engaged here too. And this was pretty much a way for me to, like I said, get blood flow to that area and warm it up. But also, I notice if I sit too much, I can feel my femurs start to kind of shift forward and push against the front of my hip socket. And so by pushing that pelvis into the ground and lifting that femur back to get the glute contraction, I could feel it was helping to realign and center that femur in the joint, which is going to be really helpful for the next movement here. The next movement being a heel elevated body weight squat. So as I mentioned before, I chose this movement for similar reasons, to practice a solid pelvic tilt position and get the glutes activated. I would normally do a low bar back squat for my squat day. However, because I was on vacation the week before and hadn't trained heavy, I wanted to pick something that was just going to allow me to trace the squat pattern, build momentum, and get me feeling good so that I could barbell back squat the following week. In addition, when you do low bar squats, your torso is typically pretty far leaned forward. And because of the circumstances I mentioned, I wanted a movement where I would stay more upright and again, just get everything feeling in alignment, moving in integrity, and moving as a unit, which is why I chose this movement. And it felt really good. I love, love, love me a Bulgarian split squat. So this movement I actually have been doing for a couple weeks now in substitution for a quad dominant leg press. That's what Alberto had programmed me for. And I'd never really leg pressed too much in the past as a former powerlifter. So I was like, what the heck, let me try it. And after several weeks, I was like, this ain't it for me, dog. The leg press I have access to is the kind where you're laying on your back and the sled is kind of up at an angle above you, and it comes towards you. And with that movement pattern, it literally just felt like my femur was being like pressed into, again, the front of my hip socket and like crushing me. And it just did not feel good. And I didn't have a unilateral leg movement in my program, single leg movement. And so I was like, you know what? I feel like Bulgarian split squats hit my quads really well. I want a unilateral movement in my program. And so I made the executive decision to do it. And I'm so glad I did, because this movement just feels so much more in control, dialed in, and autonomous, if you will. Because as I'm going through this, I have the ability to externally rotate that front hip, get more into abduction as I need to. to make it feel good. Whereas when I was doing the movement on the leg press, I just felt like my hips were like glued in and stuck, and I didn't have any range of motion that I could work with to kind of like hit my quad where I actually wanted to be working. So I'm so glad I made this switch because it feels amazing, and you have the freedom to change up your movements and make them work best for you. Okay, calf raises are a yes from me, dog. I have been loving these for like the 9 weeks now that I think I've been doing them in my program. I particularly like to hold on to something in front of me or at my sides to help stabilize. Sometimes I will do them one leg at a time. Sometimes I will do them with both legs. It's really nice to not do them on a flat surface so that you can get that extra range of motion and that stretch in the bottom of the movement. And then when I come up to the top, I'm not only squeezing in the calf, but you can see here, I'm also squeezing in the quad. So I am really feeling this like in the entirety of my leg when I'm doing it, because when I squeeze my quad, I also feel some action happening on the posterior, the back side of my legs too. So it feels so good. My legs feel so strong when I do them. And I can definitely tell I'm seeing more lines in my calf region. So I am just adoring calf raises. Finishing out this session with some banded crunches. Typically I do this with a cable at the gym, but at home I just use a band and it worked just fine. You can tell that this session I really did not go heavy. I was more focused on mind muscle connection and just like activation and engagement of the different areas I was working. That was partially because of coming back from vacation and just rebuilding momentum. But also, I'll touch on it in the next movement, why I was kind of taking it a little bit easier this first week back from vacation. These banded crunches felt so good. My core felt so connected and dialed in, and I was going really slow, controlling the movement. And I think that's been the biggest like lesson for me here is just making sure that I feel that connection rather than focusing too much on heavy weight. You can see here, I'm going to talk over the video. I was talking in the moment, but I am doing for my next training session, more upper body focused, I'm doing a makeshift incline bench. And I just have a gymnastics mat behind me that is a wood wall actually. So the first set, it was kind of aggressive on the back of my head, but I'm just imagining the angle that I would use if I were actually on a dumbbell or an incline bench at the gym. One thing is without the actual back support, I'm really having to do a lot of work with my core to stabilize me. So it was a little bit harder to isolate my pecs in this movement. But the reason I have not been pushing as hard in my training this week was because I was experiencing a little bit of vertigo from traveling. I noticed it would be more intense when I was laying flat on my back, or if I really quickly like switched over and tossed myself onto my side. So I just made sure to move slowly when I did lean back or when I did have to go forward. As you just saw in the banded crunches, it didn't bother me in that movement. So just being respectful of it, it has gotten better with time, but just really listening to my body and moving wisely. I'm not going to show you guys every movement from all of my training sessions because that would just be a lot to go through. But here I'm explaining I had just done a lat dominant horizontal row, and that will hit the top fibers right around here of your back. They run horizontally, but I'm about to do a lat pull down that is going to hit these lower fibers, which run more vertically. And so I'm doing this lat pull down vertically with a band in my home gym. Typically, I would do both of these movements I just explained at the gym on cables. With this movement specifically, using the band, I'm going to use a pretty narrow grip as I pull down to keep it nice and centered and help me to kind of hit the front of my core as well.
which is going to help engage these like lower fibers down here. At the gym for this lat pull down, I would typically use a semi-narrow grip, but I'm going to use like handles that would kind of help me to pull kind of in line like where my elbows are here. So just a little bit different grip width based on what tools I'm working with and making it um, best work for my body. And on to deadlifts, my last training day of the week. This will be the last movement I show you guys because I know I've talked about it a little bit. So just showing some tweaks I've been making. I was struggling with my setup here, and I'm about to do a kind of top down and bottom up setup in one. So I keep my torso really upright, get some slack out of the bar, but then also at the same time get some tension in my legs, and then use my low back and spread the floor to pull that bar up. And I shouldn't really say pull because it's not pulling the bar off the ground. It's really pushing through the floor to get the bar off the ground. But last time I showed you guys my deadlift, I was kind of tweaking my stance width. And so I've gone a little bit wider with my stance width. And one thing that's really helped me actually is making sure that I'm not gripping the bar too narrow with my hands. I notice when I grip too close together, I'm not able to get the same tension in my back and my lats, and honestly, just in my core. So making sure that I keep a really like comfortable grip width. And yeah, I'm almost dialed in, I feel, with that setup, kind of blending the two of the top down and the bottom up setup, which if you're not familiar with those, comment below and I'm happy to kind of explain the difference between the two. But what I was struggling with before was that I would keep my torso really nice and upright and get some good slack pulled out of the bar. But then I didn't feel like I had enough tension built up in my core or my legs. And so with that bottom up setup where you see me kind of raise my hips and then sit back into the movement, that really helped me to get my core and my legs involved. But I was not doing it properly several weeks back because I was dealing with a little bit of a hamstring tweak on my right side. That feels fully healed now. And so what you just saw there, I was able to get myself all the way seated back into kind of where I fully build tension in my lower body and then push through the floor, spread my legs so that I am able to get that weight lifted off the ground. So here we'll just show it one more time, kind of taking that breath taking that breath to build intra-abdominal pressure there. I keep myself as upright as I can, but keeping my hips in a good position where I don't have to sit down too far, and then building that lower body tension. It is a pause deadlift, so that's why you saw me pause right before the shin, get good integrity in the movement, and then finish that position. So I hope this has been helpful for you guys to get a little bit more of an eye into my training, as well as see the reasoning behind why I'm choosing the movements that I'm doing, maybe the order of the movements, and yeah, just the reasoning behind them. And all of it is to help me work on my weaknesses, to help me to move more in alignment with my own body and to just feel my best. So I hope that comes through in my training. I hope it makes a little bit more sense now that I have explained it a little bit more. If you have any questions about your own training, how to make certain tweaks based on, what you're experiencing, how it's feeling for you, maybe weaknesses you're working on, or just taking more into consideration the context of your specific situation and scenario, let me know below and I would love to offer some insight.
These next 2 months, I'm really going to cherish 2 to 2.5 months. The process, 5 weeks in, it has, had some little hiccups and bumps, but for the most part, I have really enjoyed it and really enjoyed sharing it with you guys. So just going to kind of keep an eye on how my weight trends, how I am feeling, and adjusting slash adapting cardio and calories based off of that. I would love to continue seeing that 1 pound a week rate of loss for the next 8 to 10 to 12 weeks. But we'll just kind of, go week to week and make sure that the most important thing is that I am feeling free, I am feeling in control and fresh. I'm excited to be back. These next 2-ish months, I'm really gonna cherish because I'm loving this process so far. We are 5 weeks in, 5 pounds down, so about a pound a week. So making really good progress. And I'm just so happy to be sharing this with you guys and so happy to continue the journey together.